Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy or idle religion. This is physics. There is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. You know, we teach a positive practical spirituality here at CSLDallas, a Center for Spiritual Living, and it is based on this beautiful notion that in this life, in this body, in this experience, God is all there is. And that's what's happening here. And when I first came to this spirituality, I have to tell you that I did not believe that to be true. I didn't believe it to be true. I certainly didn't know it to be true. I certainly, I was walking a different path, a different life experience. I came to this teaching young, early. I came suicidally depressed with addiction, dysfunction. Well, you know, kind of all of our stories, right? Or at least many of our stories, we have those moments, those days, those weeks, those months, even sometimes those years. And we think, what's the point? It's an age-old question. Why am I here? What am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? What's the point of all of this anyway? Where did it come from? And does anybody care? And we find ourselves confronted with these questions, whether, like me, we were in a dark place, or whether we have not yet fully engaged in our lives. We're young, we're trying to figure out where we're going, whether we're in a midlife crisis, whether we find ourselves approaching that second half, wondering, always wondering. I grew up with a very large black hole in the back of my consciousness, and it was a frightening place. And I spent a lot of years skirting around the edge of it. And I was terrified that one day I would fall in, and I would either go crazy, commit suicide, or simply cease to exist, simply disappear. Because, quite frankly, I didn't know the answer to any of the questions. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I didn't feel like really my life mattered or made all that much of a difference. And I certainly didn't know what to do about any of it. And my spirituality was fervent, but quite frankly, somewhat useless. And then I walked into a Science of Mind community in Seattle, and I learned this. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, he says there is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. There's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. Not there is something up there that you have to convince to love you, not that you have to make yourself lowly, not that you are alone and you have to make it happen. There is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. Wow. I wondered if that was for me, if that was true. Now, lest you think that this is purely a new thought idea, purely some airy-fairy notion from somebody who wrote a book one day, this is not a new idea. Albert Einstein says, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy or idle religion. This is physics. Yeah, whoa. There is something going on here. Our ancient teachers have known this for thousands of years. Buddha says what we think, we become. Jesus taught, as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. And when we contemplate these ideas, when we deeply contemplate what does this mean, we begin to recognize there is a power for good in the universe, and we can use it. We use it every time we think, we speak, we set an intention, every time we have an action in our own consciousness toward something. Ernest Holmes says this: thought is the substance of a thing. Thoughts are things. That goes all the way back to Plato. Every object in the universe is the result of a thought expressed. That is Ernest Holmes's paraphrase of Plotinus, an ancient Greek philosopher. These ideas are not new by any means. What's happening is that they are coming out of the shrouds of the mystery schools. They're coming out of the religious language. They're coming out of the scientific understanding as we move beyond a mechanistic worldview and we move beyond a way of seeing life that doesn't include us. When we move into that deeper realm that both the ancient mystics and quantum mechanics tells us about, we learn that we create our own reality. We co-create it with this power and presence. Holmes goes on to say this: we differentiate between the law and the spirit. We differentiate between these two things. The spirit directs and guides. That's the love. That's the impulse of our life to express itself. That's the trajectory of evolution towards more and greater life. That is everything that calls us to be better than we have been in the past. That is spirit moving as us. That is the impulsion of life itself. Love. And the law executes. Thoughts become things in an orderly manner. There is a process, a creative process that we understand and use. This notion that we are moving in the realm of physics, in the realm of frequency, in the realm of reality that we can understand, not some ancient mystical mystery that is shrouded in old language or terminology that we don't understand. The law executes, and creation is the result. Creation and the creation of our own lives, our own experience, and the collective experience that we create together. He says this is the Trinity: the thing, the way it works, and what it does. So you see, science and spirituality are meeting. And not only are they meeting in the realm of theory, they are meeting at the fulcrum of creation, the human heart. William James says, the greatest discovery of our generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. As you think, so shall you be. This is from the 20th century. And you'll notice this beautiful representation of the frequency of life as it moves through, and it moves through the heart. The heart, or the heart-mind connection. And it comes in one side all jagged, and it goes out the other. A coherent wave, a coherent frequency. And what stands at the fulcrum there but the human heart and mind? Joe Dispenza, in our book of the month that Reverend Karen talked about, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Joe Dispenza talks about the necessity of this coherence, the coherence of heart and mind, of spirit and body, the coherence of our understanding of life, our inner world and our outer world. And that when all of these things line up, do you see, we become the place where the coherence of the energetic of life itself is moved into the world coherently. Not hither and thither, not down, not angry, not confused, not chaotic. Coherently, in alignment with the very trajectory of life itself as it moves through us. They go on to say in science, energy flows where attention goes. What is your attention focused on? If thoughts are things, and we recognize that this coherence, as we become coherent, that is flowing that energy, that vibrational rate out into the world. What are we becoming coherent around? Are we becoming coherent around our upset? Our complaining? As Reverend Karen talked about, our complaint-free zone. We're in a complaint-free zone. Why? Because we are paying attention to our attention. Right? What is your attention focused on? Energy flows where attention goes. So we have these wonderful Be Love wristbands. And I got caught in the kitchen the other day. Steve said to me, "Oh, was that a complaint?" So I had to move my bracelet to the other hand so I would remember not to complain. That's why we're in our complaint-free month this month. Do you see? It is a radical discipline. It's a radical discipline that invites us to use this power intelligently and intentionally. So we gave these wristbands out at our Step Out in Faith, our Step Out conversation last week, and so many people are asking for them that they are available in the bookstore for a love offering, thanks to Reverend Karen and her Be Love organization. It reminds us to be love rather than to be complaint. Energy flows where attention goes. Do you see? And so when we are attending to our spiritual reality, when we are attending to the spiritual life, the energy of our life flows in that direction. Now, I don't mean our spiritual life like, oh, I'm pious and holy and I think about God all the time. I don't. Sometimes I think about Starbucks too, so, it's just the way it is. No, not like spiritual, like pious and holy, but spiritual as in what are the qualities of a spiritually fulfilled life? Love, wholeness, peace, joy, the expression of our creativity, the bringing of life into life, the ability to make peace where there was separation or disharmony, the ability to bring that vibrational energetic. Do you see that is so much higher than when we walk around in complaint or in downright anger, unforgiveness, resentment, or all of those other ways that we might see. When we focus on our spiritual life, we are literally raising our energetic and we are paying attention to our attention. And we're deciding what it is we're going to pay attention to. You see? Every spiritual discipline, every spiritual practice, every spiritual tool that we teach or is taught in any other spiritual tradition is for the purpose of learning how to pay attention to the things that we choose to pay attention to. Because those thoughts, they become things. That is the power that we are using. I love this. Ernest Holmes says this. I thought this was, okay, I just want you to think about this for a minute. We are chemists in the laboratory of the infinite. what shall you produce? Don't you just love that? And what permission that gives us. We are chemists in the laboratory of life. What shall we produce? Where we can be mad scientists all we want. How else does anything new ever get created? Try a little this, try a little that. Let's see what happens when we put that in it. Wow, look, all that old stuff, it just exploded. Make room for something new. What shall we produce? So, as I have been walking this path, and I shared with you my early experience of this black hole and not really knowing that this was the truth of my life, that the truth of my reality was actually that I live and move and have my being in this one infinite power that we can all understand and use. And I began to wake up to this truth that spirit is not only all, it's also me. It's also who I am. It's also who you are. These are one of those moments of enlightenment when we realize, oh, right, we're all connected. And how many of us, when we first start thinking that, and we first start realizing that we're one with God, we're one with the whole, we are intimately bound into life itself. Yeah, that's true for everybody but me. Because, I have those things that I do. If you knew my history, or those things that had happened in the past, right? We all have those stories that keep us outside of that. And yet, when we begin to realize that we are part of everything, nothing is left out. Leonardo da Vinci says, learn how to see, realize that everything connects to everything else. We learn this from the ancient Hindu notion of Indra's net all the way to the current reality of the quantum field. Everything is connected. Nothing is left out. Not you, not me, not any person or any being anywhere is left out of that connection. Ernest Holmes says this, the greatest discovery that was ever made in the entire history of the human race, in his estimation, is that thing which will finally deliver to us the hope of the ages. That thing which is deep, cryptic, hidden, which came with us and shall go forth with us, which is the creativity of our own mind. That thing, the Spirit of God within us. You see, when we discover that there is a power for good in the universe and we can use it, we begin to discover that we're part of that universe. The reason we can use it is because we belong to the universe. We are a part of the whole. And that very life that is emanating and animating all of creation is this life, is that life, and that life, and that life. And while we may appear separate and we may seem different, we are interconnected as that whole, a unity, a oneness. Now, I love what Dr. Martin Luther King said. Ernest Holmes also wrote it, unity has never meant uniformity. Just look around the room. We all look a little different, don't we? It's great. Isn't that great? Or we would have nothing but roses in our garden. There would be no irises, no pansies, no mums. Do you see? In this sense of interconnectedness, what we recognize is that the individuality of each one of us is the way the infinite expression of life itself is exploding into creation through each and every one of us. And if it's an infinite reality, do you see it needs infinite outlets for itself? And you're one of them. Yeah. And if you weren't here, the infinity would be lacking you. The way that you understand this universal power and presence, the way that you decide to use it, the coherence that you find within yourself that allows that life to radiate out into your life, the life of your dreams, which are different than the life of someone else's dreams. And do you see, with this understanding of a positive, practical spirituality, we understand that the very desires of our hearts, the very impulse of our soul itself is the divine, the very life of the universe exploding into expression through us. And so when we ask the question, why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my reason for being? It is to be you. It is to be the presence of life, of love itself, as only you can be it. And you see, we are not left bereft. We are actually given the power to be that. There is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. And the more fully we are aligned, the more fully coherent we are energetically, that we are vibrating to the frequency of that which we say to be true, know to be true, and that which we desire. Do you see? We are becoming the place where that shows up in our own reality, because the thoughts that we have become things. So it's interesting, this spirituality not only gave me back myself, but it taught me to follow my own dreams. It taught me to believe that I could actually create and experience things that, well, quite frankly, that my mother and father would have cocked their eyebrows at and said, really? So after my first community, I was in my first community for 7.5 years, and I was done with that. We had grown it to a certain point, and I was finished with that. And I had always wanted, my whole life, I had wanted to live in a cabin in the woods. And I had read books about women in particular who went out and spent 3 months or a year in the woods somewhere, finding themselves, having these amazing experiences. And I would read these autobiographies and I would say, I'm going to do that one day. 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 And so during the time that I was with my first community, I and a couple of friends of mine, we bought a cabin across the mountains from Seattle up in the Cascades. And when I found myself leaving my work, that particular community, I decided that I really needed to spend some time with myself and rediscover what it is that I was doing and what my purpose was and how it was showing up for me. So I bought out my friends out of this cabin, and I went to live in a cabin in the woods. It was amazing to be out there and think, oh my God, that's what I had said. I'm going to do that. 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 And I had learned to believe that there is a power for good in the universe, and I can use it. And I can use it for those things that allow me to explore more deeply who I am so that I can give my gift more fully. And there's not one thing wrong with that. As long as it harms no one, I can follow my dream and follow my bliss. And so there I was in a cabin in the woods, an extraordinary experience on a river, and I reveled in it. I should tell you, my favorite thing in the whole wide world was to go out as it was really quiet in the evening and hang the laundry on the line. Isn't that funny? And the wind would blow and I would hear the river and I could see the mountains in the distance, and I knew that in the morning the elk would be in the meadow in front of my cabin. I was in heaven, hanging my laundry. Do you see? When we follow our dreams. So, like a lot of young girls, not only did I want to always have a pony when I was a kid, I also always wanted to have a little store Wanted to have that, bookstore, art shop store with the little, with the little coffee shop attached. And I thought that would be really cool. And so here I was out in the cabin, in my cabin in the woods, and I can only hike so much, and I can only be by myself so much, and sit and adore the river so much, and quite frankly, I'm somebody who's very active, and I love working, and I actually needed to continue to supplement my income, so I found in this little town, I was 30 miles out of a little town that had 600 people in it, and there was a little arts and crafts consignment shop of local arts and crafts. Now, 600 people obviously can't support an arts and crafts consignment shop, but they can when it is flooded by people from Seattle in the summer and in the winter when they go skiing. And so it just so happened, coincidentally, that the woman who owned the store wanted to sell it. So I bought it. And I spent 2 years having this beautiful little shop. My mom came up. She helped me completely redo it. We opened up some back rooms. I began encouraging other artists from a little further away. I began to carry a little more expensive items. And, oh gosh, I had a blast. And it was the fulfillment of a dream. It was so amazing. And then, as I had my son out there in the woods, I realized that I was not going to be able to stay out there. I was not going to be able to support him and grow in the life that I wanted him to have. So I decided to leave. I called up my mom. She had moved to Texas. Can I please come? Would you like to help raise your grandson? Not hard to hear the answer to that, right? Yes, when can you come? So she came up and she helped me move. I sold my cabin for 50% more than I had bought it for in 3 years. I sold my store for 3 times what I had paid for it. Yeah. Because I had loved it and followed my dream. Do you see? Now, it's interesting because I was really thinking about this story and what a fabulous representation it is of me using this power for good in my life. Because I really wanted to move to Texas with some money in my pocket. I needed to have that as a bridge. And so I worked diligently on the sale of my cabin and the sale of this beautiful little store to people who would love it as much as I did. And who would get as much out of it as I did. And sure enough, it was a breeze. Now, some of you know, you've been around for a while. I've told this story before, but I've told the story about how much I didn't want to leave the Teanaway. I didn't want to leave my cabin. And I've told this story about how mad I was at God for taking me out of the place that I had discovered. And how hard it was for a number of years to find myself here and wonder why. And that was the story I told, to tell you the truth, up until this morning. This morning, I have chosen to tell you the story. It is exactly the same story with exactly the same truth, but with a different energetic, a different vibrational rate, focusing on a different element of the story. Do you see? And by doing so, I have rewritten my past and how that story now lives as a vibrational rate, as a vibration and energetic inside of me. And if thoughts are things, this is our project. This is the gift that life has given us, that we have this extraordinary capability. We have this extraordinary opportunity to understand who we are, to understand how the universe really works, to understand our place in it, to understand how the divine, infinite life, the one, is moving through us, and to harness that for good. For the good of our own lives, for the good of the contribution that we make in the world, for the good of the collective. In our book that we're reading this month, Joe Dispenza says this: to fully break the habit of being yourself, say goodbye to cause and effect, and embrace the quantum model of reality. Choose a potential reality that you want, live it in your thoughts and feelings, and give thanks ahead of the actual event. Because that gratitude means that in your thought, it has already happened. And if thoughts are things, do you see? There is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. I invite you to come to Wednesday night as we go deeper and deeper and deeper into this. We'll be talking about not only ancient techniques and methodologies that have been known for centuries, we will be updating them so that we understand what we are doing and how it is that we can use this power, experience ourselves coherently, and know that we are one with God. Let us pray. So we find ourselves here, sitting in this chair, in this body, in this moment. And we take that centering breath. And we take that centering breath because it takes us into that place, that heart-mind place. And the centering breath causes us to be coherent. Coherent in mind, in heart, in body. The breath aligning us. Bringing our frequency into alignment with a centering breath. And that alignment is the alignment with the truth of our being, which is the truth of the one, which is the infinite reality that is forever pouring itself into life. It is the impulsion of life, the trajectory of evolution. It is the love that is blasting itself out into creation from the heavens to the flowers at our feet. And that life is my life and your life. It is the life of all beings everywhere, all people on the planet, all beings in the galaxies. One life, connected in some ultimate field of consciousness. And so when we take that centering breath and we remember the truth about life and we remember the truth of who we are immediately aligned with that one power and presence that we can use. And so we use it to affirm, to declare our good. That life that we choose. Life that is in alignment with the very soul of our being. That life which is an expression of the love that we are, the creativity and the gift that we have to give. And we know this not only for ourselves, we know this for our loved ones. We know this for the people in our community. We know this for the strangers on the street. We know this for all people on our planet, regardless of who they are, where they live, what they look like, or how they worship. Because the truth is, there is a power for good in the universe. It is moving through each and every one of us. And so we raise our level of attention this morning. We raise our whole vibrational rate to that place where we find ourselves coherently aligned with love, with joy, with peace, with prosperity, with abundance, with beauty, with wholeness, with perfect health, and with the ability to contribute in a way that we have never done before. And so we say amen and hallelujah, because we are grateful to know this truth. We are grateful to know how it works. We are grateful to set our minds in motion, to speak our word, and to know that the universe always moves in that direction. And so with perfect trust and faith, we can release our thought into that deep and abiding presence of the One. We let it go. We let it be. And so it is.